everybody. Welcome to the second piece of the doubleheader here on Bet.NOLA.com. You just watched the Fantasy Roundup show, and now it's time for Bayou Bets for this Tuesday, December the 19th, 2023. Before we get to it, we will ask you to subscribe to the Bayou Bets YouTube channel. You can always find out when we're going on, like today, a weird time. I don't know that we've ever had a Tuesday show, but we've got one today. And also that Caesar Sportsbook is the official odds partner of Bet.NOLA.com. I'm Jim Derry. I got Thomas Casale here with me. He's coming off the IR to work with us today. Not feeling that great, but we're gonna get through the show because we've got a lot of fun stuff to talk about this afternoon.
Yeah, no, I'm not feeling great physically, but the Saints helped put an end to the Tommy DeVito madness up here in New York. All is quiet this week. I haven't heard any no texts about how Tommy DeVito is going to be the starting quarterback for the Giants next season.
I heard that he's getting a little sick of the Italian stuff. I mean, does he realize that he should enjoy his 15 minutes of fame while he can?
Yeah, well, not only that, I'm pretty sure he's the one who started it. So,
Exactly.
he comes in wearing this stuff, and his agent looks like Rocky and Rocky 2. I mean, what do you expect?
Yeah, well, enjoy it while it lasts, because 3 weeks from now, people might not even remember who the hell you are or
Right.
were. So enjoy it. All right, our topics for today, you can see them on the screen. They're pretty obvious. It's mostly Saints today. They need one more win. One more win, and you can actually call it a winning streak. They haven't had one of those since last year. Some of you are rooting against it. I understand that. We'll get to that in a little bit. Who-dats are not convinced because they beat the Panthers and the Giants. There are a lot of people not convinced. We will talk about the Saints and the Rams playing on a short week on Thursday night. This is our only show of the week, so we're going to get it all out of the way here, and then we're going to finish up. We're going to show you our results from Big Bucks, tell you about how Big Bucks is going to be played this week, and then we'll also talk about Jayden Daniels opting out and maybe a little bit on what we think, where we are with the National Championship Bowl games, the college football playoffs. All right, first we are going to talk about the New Orleans Saints and the rout of the Panthers and the Giants. Thomas, they're not convinced.
No, I mean, it's always hard when you're like, take the Eagles, for instance, right? The Eagles are going to go 3-0 here down the stretch, but people are now, what you're looking at the Eagles is, well, you played good teams and you didn't do well. And so the Saints beat too bad. Here's the thing, though, Jim, there's always that argument, like if a team shouldn't get into the NCAA tournament, then it wins 2 or 3 games and people say, see, I told you so. That argument's apples and oranges. Just because you get in doesn't mean you can't win some games, right? So, from my perspective, it's just get in and then see what happens. And I know you and I have been down on the Bucks since we're going to be going against the Bucks till they hoist the Super Bowl trophy. I mean, we have not believed in the Bucks all year. I know they've been playing better, but I still don't believe in them. I still think the Saints win this division and get to the playoffs.
Well, you see the odds there in the bottom left of your screen. The odds are telling us that it is the Buccaneers that are favored for the first time this season at minus 150. You got to lay $150 to win 100 if you think the Bucs are going to win the division. That is, if you want to bet on it. If you think the Saints are going to win the division, there's value there, 170. And the Falcons now at plus 800. I'm going to tell you here, I don't know that I'm on the Bucs per se. I'm just not betting on this, period. The reason being is I don't think people realize the Saints fans who are still rooting for them to win, that is. I don't think Saints fans realize what needs to happen for them. Even though they're in a tie, they're definitely at a disadvantage. And the reason being because if the Falcons beat the Jaguars, I mean not the Falcons, if the Bucs beat the Jaguars this week, and they might be without Trevor Lawrence, the Bucs are clearly in a big-time catbird seat, especially if the Saints were to lose to the Rams. Because not only would they have a one-game lead, but then they would have every tiebreaker in the book. So the Saints would then have to hope that they win at Tampa the week after on New Year's Eve, and then have to beat Atlanta and hope that Tampa loses to the Panthers. It's just a weird time right now for the Saints. I'm starting to lean towards maybe it is going to be the Bucs.
Yeah, it's going to go right down to the wire. Obviously, the Saints have put themselves in a position where there's no room for error. And, we'll talk about it, but they don't have an easy game this week. The Rams, to me, have outright. I took the under on the Rams win total, and that's a loser. So, I got to give Sean McVay credit. He's got this team playing well, a very young team. So it's going to be another dogfight, but another loss, and, they're probably done.
Well, I tell you, we're going to preview Saints Rams in just a minute, but I will say this: if you go back to my previews from early in the season, one of the teams I thought was going to be a surprise team this year was the Rams, and they have proven that their offense is more than capable. I never knew this Puka Nakua kid would come out of nowhere and play the way he's done. Never heard of him before, like week 1 or 2. But Cooper Kupp is playing like Cooper Kupp. Kyron Wilson, the rookie running back, is outstanding. Has been so since early in the season when he's healthy. So the Saints are getting the Rams when they're healthy, and that's not a good thing for them. Again, we'll get into the preview. The Saints are 4-point dogs. The first time I think they've been as more than a field goal underdog all season long as they travel to L.A. Jeff Haspel says strangely he's been against them. Strangely enough, he thinks the Saints beat the Rams. Their time, if there is one, is now. Next year is the flush. I don't disagree with that at all. I said that 1,000 different ways. Before we get to next week, though, let's put a capper on, Thomas. I want to get your opinion. Look, the Saints now win 2 games in a row back-to-back, 28-6, 24-6. They haven't allowed a touchdown since the Lions game. And 3 of the 4 came early in the game. So they've really only allowed 1 touchdown in the last 11 quarters. Can that carry over when you play an offense like this that they're coming up against?
Yeah, well, I think you can only play who's in front of you, right? And sometimes it's important when you play teams, and the Saints needed to get some more confidence. You want to play your best football. Again, going back to the Eagles, the Eagles are making coaching changes. The quarterback saying they're not committed. Like, it's week 16. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't bode well for the Eagles. But even if a team like the Saints, forget about what happened 2 months ago, right? You want to be playing your best football. And in my opinion, like a month ago, I don't know if they beat the Panthers and Giants this badly back to back with how crazy they've been playing. So I think it's a good sign going into this game. Listen, I think this is a razor tight game, and it's going to be it's actually going to be a Thursday night football game worth watching.
I don't know if I agree. We'll get to that in just a minute. Troy says, so said the NFC South gets a playoff spot, worst division in football. Look, man, every division deserves to get a playoff team, whether you like it or not. I mean, no one was apologizing for the Seattle Seahawks when they went 7-9 and then beat the Saints to advance the next round, by the way. You can't look at divisions that way. Every division deserves to get a playoff spot, no matter what. That's my opinion. Terry says she hopes the Saints steamroll the Rams after losing to them not in Super Bowl corrupt game. Yeah, my wife still has a shirt that says "Still Salty." Still wearing the shirt proudly. Rachel Riley says, "Go Saints." We'll find out. All right, let's get to the preview section. We have talked enough, I guess, about Saints and Giants, and we're going to spend more time on the preview part of this anyway. And you look at these numbers, Thomas, and I got to say, there are other numbers that I'm just going to give my pick away. I don't see how the Saints win this game. I just don't. This is not a good matchup for them at all. They're coming off 3 straight games at home. They played 2 lousy opponents and beat up on them. I don't think the Lions are nearly as good as everybody thinks they are. I actually think this Rams team is better than the Lions, especially the way they're playing and when they're healthy. Overall, if you look at their team numbers, that 8 total offensive ranking is kind of misleading because, remember, they missed Stafford for 2 games. He was out. Kyron Wilson was out for 3 or 4 games. Cooper Kupp missed some time. So all that number is all mixed in with this Rams team when they've had their injuries. When they're healthy, to me, they're a top 5 offense, and the Saints have proven that they can't stop really good offenses over the course of the season. I think the Saints' 11th defensive ranking is a little misleading as well. I just don't know how they're going to stop this team.
Yeah, I lean the Rams here too. Again, one of the things when I looked at the Rams this offseason, you'd mentioned their offense. I was extremely concerned with the defense because that's where they're really young. And if you look at their 2 deep, I was looking at the secondary. I don't even know who some of these guys are.
Yeah.
So even though they're ranked 18th in total defense, I think they've exceeded expectations, especially recently. Their pass rush has really been a problem lately for teams. And I think the Saints are going to struggle there blocking these guys up front. So I agree. I think the Rams win. I think it's going to be a good game, though. I think it's going to be a competitive, fun game to watch. But when you look at teams like if you're looking like, well, who's going to make the playoffs, right? Who could do something? Like if Green Bay makes the playoffs, they're not going to do anything. Like I think the Rams are a team. If they get in the playoffs, they could win a game. Yeah.
100%.
So, as long as Stafford's healthy and the receivers are healthy. So, again, this is a team that far exceeded my expectations coming into the season.
Yeah, if the Rams end up being like a 7 seed and they go play Philadelphia doesn't want to play this team.
No,
The way Philadelphia is
no.
playing right now, I don't think the Philadelphia is ripe for the picking against a team like this. So and in essence, this is a playoff game. I mean, if you talk about it, the Saints still actually have a chance to make the playoffs, even if they don't win the NFC South. So back to Troy Thibodeau's point, the NFC South doesn't deserve a spot in the playoffs. Well, the South might have two spots because it's actually possible. I mean, even if the Saints lose this game and then they go win the last two and finish with 9 wins, they have a legitimate chance to make the playoffs. They're going to lose every tiebreaker, but I think they have a real chance to make the playoffs, even if they don't get to 10 wins, even if they don't win the NFC South.
Yeah, no, it's there's a bunch of teams, and that's what that extra playoff spot does.
That's what Daniel Furlow's saying.
It's gonna. And I'll tell you, this game though was, you mentioned Kyron Williams. That's the guy you got to stop. I saw a stat today I couldn't believe, Jim. He ranks first in rushing yards per game ahead of Christian McCaffrey, and he's missed a couple of games. He's either third or fourth in the NFL in rushing. I mean, this kid's had a tremendous year for the Rams, and you think of all the receivers and everything, but when he gets cranking, this offense is really hard to stop. And I think that added dimension is something that I didn't really see coming into the season, that they were going to be able to run the football like this. Really makes this team tough.
Troy, I get where you're going. You're mocking everything you can. If it comes to the Saints, you're just going to mock it. I understand that. It's not hilarious. It's fact. If the Saints go 9-8, which is a legitimate possibility, and they don't win the South, if the Buccaneers win this week and then win the division on tiebreakers, and the Bucs and Saints are both 9-8, they're probably both going to go to the playoffs. It's not. We're not being funny here. We're not saying it's. I think it's likely more than not. If the Saints go 9-8 and don't win the division, I think they're probably going to go to the playoffs. I mean, so we can laugh all we want. I mean, that's a fact. It's where we are. But here's one of the things I don't like about this week, Thomas. When I go back in history, and I like to do trends columns, and I kind of started working through and going through some of the trends. If you take out a stretch from 1987 to 94, when the Saints, and for people that don't know, younger people might not know this, the Saints and Rams were in the same division for a long, long time. And if you take out a stretch from 1987 to 94 when they played every year, the Saints just don't play well away from the Dome against this team in their history. Besides that stretch, they won 8 in a row from 87 to 94. Other than those games, they are 8-23 in their history away from New Orleans against the Rams. They just don't play well. They have lost 4 in a row at L.A./St. Louis, because that's where they were before they were in L.A. They haven't won on the road against the Rams since 2009. We all know what happened in 2009. Saints won the Super Bowl. So the Saints just don't play the Rams well. Actually, don't play them well at all, but they really don't play them well there.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And some series trends are like that. It's kind of it's all different teams and different coaches, but it's interesting how that happens. Let me ask you, Jim, like sometimes when teams go, like say the Cowboys or the Steelers, for instance, play the Rams, it's usually a pro Cowboys or now that won't be the case
Right.
with the Saints, right? It's not going to be like a pro Saints crowd.
Normally I would say, yeah, they would travel to L.A., and so unless they book this trip like before, but really, who's going to go to L.A. during Christmas week? And Jeff brings up a really good point. How many at SoFi? I think that might be like half full kind of crowd. So I don't know that it's a home field advantage for the Rams per se, as much as the Saints having to go across the country on a short week. Even worse than a short week, the fact that they got to go during Christmas week. So you're thinking about your family. You don't even have time to spend with your family. Your wife might be nagging at you a little bit. It's Christmas week. What are we going to get the kid? Like, I can't worry about the kids. I got to worry about the Rams. So you got all that stuff going on. I guarantee you there are players that have that stuff going on. So this is a huge game. Look, the Saints, I've had trouble being a believer in this team, as you know. I've kind of made fun of them for 6 weeks now. I'm like a lot of who-dats. I'm not necessarily buying in because of the 2 wins they have. But if they win this game, I'll feel completely different about this team. And a lot of people, this is the game that Dennis Allen, if he can find a way to win this game, Tom, I think that this is the game that Dennis Allen can sell some fans. He's not going to sell everybody. There are people out there that hate him no matter what. They can win the rest of their games, win a playoff game. get to the divisional round and they'll still hate Dennis Allen and Derek Carr. You're not going to change some people's opinions. But this is that swing kind of game. You think of an election and moments in an election that change the course of an election. This is the game that maybe changes the course of opinion for Dennis Allen and Derek Carr, maybe.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see what happens if they win. If more people start jumping on the bandwagon, I agree. I think some people are going to be salty no matter what happens. They could probably win out, and it still won't matter. I do think it's interesting though, Jim. Like I just think sports have changed a little bit. Like it really depends on who's playing the best at the end of the season, who has a chance. Like there's not really dominant teams anymore. Yes, San Francisco is really good. Let's take them out of the equation. But other than that, I mean, we saw the Cowboy. Everyone had this Cowboy Super Bowl parade planned, and then they go to Buffalo and get blown out. So I think to what you're saying is true. Like they beat two bad teams, but if they go on the road and beat the Rams, now I think it's worth looking at this Saints team. Hey, again, forget about what happened 2 months ago. They're playing good football right now. What can they do moving forward?
Oh, there's no doubt. But one thing that scares me, and beyond trends, if you look at this matchup, to me, this screams that it's got to be a Derek Carr game. So
yes.
all the Derek Carr haters out there, if you want the Saints to win, you're rooting for Derek Carr because to me, I just don't think they're going to be able to run the ball all that well. You're going to have to depend on Derek Carr. And Troy asked, will Chris Olave play, asking for fantasy purposes. Gabe, just nod your head yes or no. I didn't get to see the fantasy show. Were you guys thinking that Chris Olave will play, yes or no? There, it's a what's up. Nobody knows. And I think that's kind of where we are right now with Olave. My guess is him not playing last week obviously gives him a better chance to play this week, but maybe that's why he was held out of last week. I mean, you don't clear protocol, whatever, but I think that it's at least 50-50 that he would play.
Yeah, and I think that's a big one because I agree with you. I think watching this game on Twitter is going to go one or two ways. One, Carr's going to have a really good game, and people are going to start, or it's going to be one of those Derek Carr is trending 10 minutes into the game, and it's not for anything good. So I agree 100%. This is a Derek Carr game, so obviously having Olave there would be a big help.
And I will say this, in Derek Carr's defense, I've said this before, if you think about the games that he's played well, he's really played fairly well in every game except the 3 games that he was injured or coming off of an injury. Other than that, he's played well. He played well last week. You could say whatever you want. If you can hate him all you want, but I didn't hear anybody bitching about Derek Carr this week because he had the numbers to back him up. I think he was 23 of 28 or something like that. I know his passer rating was like 138, which is only 16 points below perfect. So can he do it 2 games in a row? We'll find out. But again, I think he has to. He really did. He really does have to. The 21, the worst number on this board for the Rams is their 21st ranked passing offense. And I think, Tom, as well, I also think that the offensive line, the makeshift offensive line, has played well.
Yeah, no, it has. And again, that's why it's hard. To me, it's hard to go back a month and a half and say like, oh, what happened then? Now, listen, if the Saints go out and get beat, then that's the team they've been all season. But I still think, to your point, you can say what you want about the Panthers and the Giants. Okay, they're not overly talented teams. We know that. But on both of those teams, the strength is up front on defense. They've given teams trouble up front. That's why they have a couple wins. It's purely because, listen, Tommy DeVito hasn't done much. It's been the Giants defense that controlled the Patriots game. And so they played well in both of those games. And the Panthers have a really good defensive front. They stink, and people don't want to acknowledge that, but they do. And so it'll be interesting to see if they can hold up. Listen, there ain't many plays where Aaron Donald doesn't have 2 guys on him. So your other guys are going to have to block one-on-one. And that's going to be another story of the game, because I do agree. I think that they're going to pass the ball quite a bit on Thursday night.
Yeah, you'll see extra linemen, so-and-so's reporting eligible. You'll see 2 tight end sets. You'll see Foster Moreau and Juwan Johnson in there playing together. I think you'll see all that. So before I guess, you know what? We'll save our Saints prediction for the end. We'll give a Saints prediction at the end with a final score. I've kind of already told you what I think, but we'll give a final score, whether we think they cover, don't cover, what we think is going to happen. We'll come back to that at the end. But I want to get to the college football segment. But before, we don't have big bucks this week, so we got to show you our results. Of course, one thing about being able to click the buttons on and pressing on what graphics we're going to show, I had a good week, so I can show it up there. Sorry for Spencer that we had to show it, but 4-1. And you talked about Dallas. I should have listened to you.
Yeah, if you had listened to me, you'd have been unbeaten. That's the only time that's the only thing I've been right about all year.
I should have listened. And Gabe had a good week too. It's glad to see we got some green back on this list for a change. We'll be back with big bucks. By the way, we're going to do our big bucks picks this week in print. I will be typing them up. They will be on bet.nola.com on Wednesday. I'm going on a little bit of vacation. I'm going to be out for about 5 or 6 days. We'll see you when we come back. But we're going to have big bucks on bet.nola.com. We'll be typing them in so Spencer avoids wearing the turkey hat with the first 0-5 in the history of this segment.
Wow.
I think it is, actually. All right. Going to college and talking about LSU in a little bit, maybe of the college football playoffs. Jayden Daniels opts out. Will there be more opt-outs, Tom, for LSU? I'm thinking no. I think if they were going to do it, they would have done it already. But I'm interested to get your take on the opt-out situation because I certainly have mine.
Yeah, listen, it is what it is, right? It's almost impossible to bet bowl games anymore unless it's the day of. I bet one bowl game early and the quarterback opted out and Boise State got creamed. So that you really got to kind of hold on and wait and see what's going to happen. I don't think, listen, as good as Jayden Daniels is, I don't think it impacts the game all that much. We've seen it in the line. And that's more reflection on Wisconsin. LSU has a good backup quarterback. They're tons more talented than Wisconsin is. Wisconsin's starting guys off the street. So I don't think it makes a big difference in that game unless both receivers start opting out. But I'm with you. I feel like once Daniels opted out, you would have seen others relatively close to that announcement, and we haven't. So I would expect those guys to play.
Yeah, specifically Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. What will they do? I think they're going to play. And look, you're talking about a backup quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier, which is more than capable. I mean, you're talking about a Nussmeier. Nussmeier was actually in the running. People were talking about maybe there'd be a quarterback battle. Now, obviously,
I will say this, Jim. There was a point in the offseason where his Heisman odds were a heck of a lot better than Jayden Daniels' Heisman odds. Just think about that. We should have talked about that more. So there was people, the odds makers early on thought he was probably going to win the starting job at some point. And then Jayden Daniels goes out and wins the Heisman.
Yeah, well, I don't think most of us on this bet.nola.com staff didn't think that. I think we've always been behind Jayden Daniels from the beginning. I know Gabe Spencer and I had a show early on, I think before you even came on, where we were talking about Jayden Daniels and we didn't understand the whole. I mean, didn't understand why it was a controversy or even if it is one to begin with. I think we all three of us thought that Jayden Daniels was clearly the best quarterback for LSU, and he proved that. And Brian Kelly, I think, knew what he was doing there, and that proved as well. As far as the opt-out situation goes, look. This whole thing, I get it. They do it for their own personal reasons, and college football is not the same as it was 5 or 10 years ago, and I don't want to sound like the get off my lawn dude, but look, you make a commitment to a team. I have a problem with this. I mean, you're trying to avoid an injury for what? There's a 1% chance you're going to get hurt bad enough to where you can't be ready by the combine? Come on, take out insurance or something. Use your NIL money. But, I mean, what are you really getting out of flaking out on your team for it's a meaningless bowl game? Well, you know what? So was LSU Texas A&M. Oh, but that was for the Heisman. That was for an individual honor. I love Jayden Daniels, and I just don't like this look, not just for Jayden Daniels, but anyone that opts out. I have a problem with it. I really do.
Yeah, I hear your point, and it certainly, listen, they used to say, these bowl games are meaningless. It meant that they weren't playing for anything. Now a lot of these bowl games are meaningless. You got a third string quarterback in there but the only argument I'll make is this. If my son was in that position and he came to me and said, I don't know how I would react. That would be the only thing, is if put myself in and he said, I don't know if I want to play in the bowl game. I want to get ready for the draft. Now my son's never going to be in that position, so I don't have to worry about it.
Could be
But
the first long, could be the first long
yeah,
snapper ever
to opt
in
out.
history to
Yeah.
opt out.
I don't want to take a chance on those 6 snaps. The Patriots are looking at me. But no, I do hear and I think that was again another one of my reasons of expanding the playoffs is to get more meaningful. We have so many games at the end of the college season that mean nothing. Well, what are they for? You know what I mean? Now with 12 teams, listen, you got to have guts to opt out of a playoff game. Then I'm going to be 100% on board with you. If you're not going to be there for your team when you're in the playoffs, then I don't know why you're even playing.
And I will say this, people are arguing about whether there should be more teams in the playoffs because, wow, I mean, come on, let's be realistic. A 12th team isn't going to win a national championship. If you expand it to 32, the 32nd team has no chance whatsoever of winning a national championship. That's probably true, but at least they're meaningful games. I mean, right now, what is the ReliaQuest Bowl? I mean, it's you get one more chance to see your team play, but I'm with you. I mean, you start making all these games and call them bowl games if you want. Call the ReliaQuest Bowl the 8 versus the 25 or whatever the hell it would be. I don't care what you call it. I mean, call it whatever you want. But, I mean, you add teams. To me, what is more fun than March Madness? You talk about it all the time. You love college basketball. Does anybody think that the 64-65 play-in game, any of those teams? No, but it's fun to watch. It makes it, and you're right. No one would opt out of that game because they're playing in the playoffs. I mean, look, Jeff says, I don't want to question Jayden Daniels' character because I hate that. I love the kid. But I can't argue with this point. Bo Nix didn't opt out. Daniels is better, but character matters. Does that say stuff about your character? No, because we don't know who's advising Jayden Daniels to opt out. Maybe his dad is. Maybe he's got an agent who tells him to get out. We don't know the situation. But
yeah, and Jim, something you brought up though, I think is important is you mentioned the Texas A&M game. Like, let's say Daniels wasn't up for that. When are these kids going to start opting out during the season?
It's coming.
I'll be honest. I think we came close this year with Caleb Williams. I think we came. He was so distraught about being on that team. I bet you there was conversations about him not playing, and then we get dangerous. Right now, we're not just talking about the CarQuest Bowl. We're talking about the rest of the season with your teammates. Then we have a big problem.
I couldn't agree more. Gabe said we saw Terrace Marshall do it in 2020, and look. It's going to happen. It's going to happen more and more. This isn't going away. And what I would say that I wish people would do, enforce the only way you can fix this is to write it in their NIL contracts. If they sign an NIL contract, they have to play through the end of the season, unless they're injured, obviously. Then they'll just fake injury, I guess, and wear the uniform on the sideline. But you write it in the contract that they don't get paid unless they play unless they're at least there on the sideline for every single game. Who's going to want to stand on the sideline and not play? Nobody.
Yeah.
So I think that would solve that problem, but I don't know. All right, before we end the show, T Mama says she's going to be at SoFi yelling, hollering, who dat? Yeah. Jeff and I agree on something. Says I got a good idea. All right, before we go, we're going to give our predictions. Again, this is our only show of the week because of Christmas. So we're going to give our predictions for Saints and Rams. Tom, what you got?
Yeah, I think this line is pretty close on both accounts. I'm going to go 24-20 Rams. I think it's close into the fourth quarter, but I like the Rams to get a tight win and keep their playoff hopes alive.
Oh, man, I hope you're right. I hope it's fun until the end. I don't see it. I got a bad feeling the Saints are going to lay an egg in this one. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I want this season to be relevant. It's tough to do shows and write about all the stuff, the teams you cover when they stink. It just is. So a lot of people will call me Derry Downer and say whatever. I'm not rooting for them to lose. I mean, obviously, if anyone's listened to my shows the past couple of weeks, I'm telling people who are rooting for them to lose how silly they are. It accomplishes absolutely nothing. That being said, I just don't think this. Again, I've said this. I don't think this is a good matchup for the Saints, and not just because it's quote unquote a Derek Carr game. They don't play well against the Rams on the road. I don't know how they stop Stafford, Kupp, Nakua, Kyron Wilson, and whoever else you want to throw in there. I think it's going to be a bad game for the defense. I think it's going to be high scoring and a fun game. I've got Rams 30, Saints 21. I think the Rams win, and I think the Rams cover. So Stephen Crapel says, who dat, go Saints. So he hopes I'm wrong, too. He says the Saints beat L.A. by 14. That would be quite a game. The Saints beat the Rams by 14. Any final thoughts there, Mr. Casale?
No, it's been great doing the show. I wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, whatever whatever you celebrate. Looking forward to finishing out the year. Hey, listen, like Jim said, we want this. Saints going to the playoffs is good for us. It's good for business. We're rooting for the Saints.
Yeah.
So listen, I hope my prediction's wrong. I hope they win. I hope they look good. But either way, Jim, Merry Christmas to you, and thanks for everything you've done since I've come on board here.
Thanks, Tom. I really appreciate that, and we've had a great partnership here over the last few months. I think that our brand has grown. We appreciate. Obviously, there are more followers watching our shows every time we come on. There are more people watching Bayou Bets. There are more people listening to Datitude. I know for some reason Datitude does better when the Saints lose. I guess they like to hear me moan and groan about it. So I hope I'm not moaning and groan. I hope no one listens then next week. But we're going to take a little break from that, and I wish you Merry Christmas as well. And everybody out there, have a wonderful Christmas. We will be back next week. We've got 2 shows. We'll be back next Thursday, I believe it was the 28th. We're going to do a show which is going to be kind of more of a Saints show, kind of following up on the Rams game and then looking ahead to the Bucs game, which is going to be big no matter what. And then on Friday, Thomas and I, and I think the whole crew, we're going to do a bowl preview show. We're going to talk about not just the national championship games, the college football playoff games, I should say, but everything that's coming up because that weekend is going to be a big weekend for college football. We'll have a special show just for that on Friday the 29th. Again, we thank everybody watching. Steven says, Saints to the Super Bowl. Hey, if we're talking about the Saints in the February and not just talking about the draft, that's a good thing. We hope it happens. Merry Christmas, everybody. We'll see you next week.